If you were to walk into a mosque in 11th century Spain and look up, you'd see a society operating at the peak of global sophistication. This was Al-Andalus, a Muslim-ruled territory on the Iberian Peninsula defined by thriving trade, advanced urban planning, and a multicultural society where Jews, Christians, and Muslims lived side by side. But that golden era was fragile. By the early 1000s, the central government collapsed, and Al-Andalus shattered into dozens of rival micro-kingdoms known as taifas. Divided and fighting among themselves, these small kingdoms became easy targets. Christian forces from the north launched a rapid military advance known as the Reconquista, capturing territory piece by piece. Facing an existential threat, Andalusi leaders realized their wealth and poetry couldn't stop an invading army. To survive, they had to look for a military lifeline outside of Europe entirely. The survival of this advanced society ultimately depended on a rescue force from the seemingly hostile environments of North Africa. To understand how this rescue happened, we turn to 14th century philosopher Ibn Khaldun. He identified a specific code for how empires operate. His theory describes an inevitable clash between two environments. A tough, unified group from the harsh outer periphery compresses and overtakes a wealthy, stagnant city in the center, only to eventually dissolve into that very same center. Khaldun's framework provides the blueprint for understanding who saved Islamic Spain and what eventually destroyed them. We have to leave the manicured gardens of Spain and head south into the deep Sahara and the remote peaks of the high Atlas Mountains. Two distinct Berber groups were forged by these landscapes, the Almoravids, who were desert nomads, and the Almohads, who hailed from the mountain valleys. Surviving in these punishing environments required an intense social bond. Khaldun called this asabiya, an unbreakable tribal solidarity where the group operates as a single, unified organism. When charismatic leaders introduced strict religious reforms to these groups, that tribal loyalty gained a powerful ideological focus. It turned scattered nomads into a highly motivated, unified military force. The Berbers swept from remote outposts, unified North Africa, crossed the Strait of Gibraltar, and halted the Christian advance in Spain. Sustained by a massive economic engine, they controlled the Saharan trade routes to the Mediterranean, managing the flow of gold across two continents. The fragmented, wealthy center of Al-Andalus lacked the grit to defend itself. It was only the raw power from the African periphery that was capable of rescuing it. But Khaldun identified a paradox in this success. Conquering a highly advanced society changes the conquerors. He used the term umran to describe a civilized, settled urban society. As the Berber tribes moved into wealthy cities like Seville and Marrakesh, they traded their rugged lifestyle for courtly politics and luxury. You can see this shift in the monuments they built. They abandoned their minimalist desert roots and commissioned spectacular structures like the Giralda Tower, defined by intricate, sophisticated decorative brickwork. Political life shifted as well. Egalitarian tribal councils were replaced by massive bureaucracies, and the leaders became a wealthy, isolated dynastic elite. By achieving peak civilization, these empires dissolved their own asabiya. They lost the very group solidarity and military edge that had brought them to power in the first place. This decline follows a predictable timeline. Khaldun noted that the original tribal toughness typically disappears by the third generation of dynastic rulers. This third generation faced a logistical nightmare, trying to manage a fractured empire across two continents with a military that had lost its edge. Sensing this internal weakness, the Christian kingdoms from the north pushed harder. The defenses the nomads had built decades earlier began to buckle under the renewed pressure of the Reconquista. The loss of territory was total. By the 1250s, the vast cross-continental empire was reduced merely to the isolated remnant of the Emirates of Granada. The collapse was the predictable result of Khaldun's cycle, playing out exactly as the theory suggests. Because they eventually lost control of the peninsula, these Berber empires are often dismissed as barbarians who ruined a European utopia, but the historical evidence shows they were vital preservers of civilization. They permanently integrated North Africa into the Islamic world and fueled global commerce by minting gold dinars that were traded across the Mediterranean. Their intervention preserved Al-Andalus for 2 extra centuries. That bought enough time for its scientific and cultural achievements to survive long enough to reach the rest of Europe. The centuries-long survival of Al-Andalus stands as a direct testament to the power of the North African periphery, a force that sustained a civilization it would eventually, inevitably absorb.